Welcome back to Getting Past the Premium, everybody. Here in person, which is my favorite way to do podcasts, right? With a good buddy of mine, Cyrus Jaffery, here in Omaha. And we're going to go through kind of your background in the industry and how you got to what you guys are doing today, and then get into some of the fun stuff around sales and all that. So why don't you, for everybody, just kind of talk through your background, how you got in the industry, some of that, because it is super interesting. You just wrote a book, which I think is sweet. So talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, first of all, thanks for having me, man.
Yeah.
Cool spot over here. It's always nice to see Omaha guys, you know. He came over to our office. I came over to his office. It's funny because this is our first time actually, like, me coming to your office and you coming to our office. You would think there would be a lot more collaboration, which we need to do.
Yeah, we do.
We need to do a better job of. But it's funny because we're both in the same industry, but we're completely like opposites of like what we do. So this would be a fun conversation.
It's the beauty of our industry, man. I love that because so many you can do the same thing in so many different ways.
100%. So originally from Afghanistan, I moved to the U.S. in 2002 as a refugee, 14 years old. Our house got bombed when we were 2 years old in Afghanistan. The Taliban came to invade Afghanistan early 90s. Got bombed, moved over to Pakistan for 12 years, and then became a refugee. Came to the U.S. in 2002 in Colorado. Was only there for like 6 months, and my aunt lived in Nebraska, so we've been here for about 22 years or so. So went to high school, Mill North High School, right here locally. Went to Nebraska, Westland, and Lincoln. And then right after Lincoln, man, just I was at the bank, and I met my wife now, and I walked into her dad's house one day. It was our first Husker game or something. All we have is Husker games here. There's nothing else. So we go get together for a Husker game, football, and I walked into his house. I'm like, man, what do you do for a living? And he's like, I'm a State Farm agent.
Okay.
You know, he's Tom Rivera right up the street.
Got it. Yeah.
Yep. So he's my father-in-law. I was like, oh,
I think
cool.
You told me that, yeah.
Yep. So I was like, all right, well, I think I'm going to be a State Farm agent. So here we go. And he had a pool in the backyard on like the 18th of a golf course.
Oh, wow, yeah.
18th, so I was like, man, this is cool. So that's how I kind of got into the industry, man. I applied, it took me 2 or 3 times. They said no as a State Farm agent. And my father-in-law said that I didn't have, here's his exact words, I didn't have the salsa to be on his team.
Interesting.
Because you really don't have the salsa. I was a banker at Wells Fargo, mortgages actually. He's like, you don't really have the salsa. I don't think you'll make it. I was like, all right. I went and applied to become an agent, got denied 2 or 3 times, and then finally made an agent. So I was an agent for State Farm from 2013 to 2019, 6 years.
Oh, wow.
Yep, left in 2019 on the independent channel, and here we are, 5 years into the indie channel.
Yeah, so you were, I'm not familiar with the State Farm model. You were underneath somebody else's umbrella for 6 years, right? And then like eventually, if you grow your book or something underneath them, you could get your own
good question.
shop or whatever.
So State Farm, you're either a 1099 or you're a W-2 employee for a 1099 contractor that is a 1099 contractor to State Farm.
Got it.
So all State Farm agents are 1099 contractors, and they go hire their own staff, W-2 employees, however you want to do it. They pay for their own rent. Everything you pay for your own. You have a 1099 relationship to State Farm, and it's the only relationship because it's not like you can go get other carriers, right? Yeah. So I was my own agent to a State Farm. So I was an independent contractor to State Farm. I had my own location. I got my own location. I didn't work for another agent. And we did that for 6 years and then left.
Got it.
Yep.
Okay, so then compare and contrast for everybody, because we were having this conversation before. I think there's a lot of folks out there either on the captive side, right, as a producer or in your shoes, or even a producer at a large firm or something like that, which can be similar, that might be looking at making the switch. So compare and contrast the captive channel at State Farm to the independent channel where you're at now.
I feel like everybody should have the training of a captive.
Yeah.
I truly believe that. Or a company like yours, where you have training and people kind of watching what you're doing, and you got a lot of people that you could go to for questions and stuff. I feel like if people that like just go and start their own independent agency, I feel like are going to be at a disadvantage in my opinion, because man, it's a very tough industry.
Yeah. There's some infrastructure built at those bigger companies.
100%. You know, you guys have infrastructure. People could come in and you can kind of show them the ropes of what to do and what not to do, what to keep them accountable for. Like producers that come into my agency on the personal line side, like we give them a roadmap of like, hey man, like this is what you have to do to be successful on this side. Like I say for you guys. So I honestly encourage people to go to the captive side, right? And the best way to put it is the captive channels are literally like you work for a corporate office. Like it's just the best way for me to put it. Versus the independent channel, you're an entrepreneur, man. You can do a lot of things you want. You're like, you own a business, literally. It's funny. It's like it says captive in it. Like you know what I'm saying? Like it's captive. Like you're captive to one thing. And I feel like I'm one of those guys, man, that like I was stuck in this balloon. And I was trying to pop out of the balloon, trying to push the buttons as much as I could. I'm like, there's got to be a way to make this work the way I want it to. And there's not. I mean, it's very, like that balloon is not popping. Like you stay in that balloon and you're going to die. You, right? They just won't let you. So that's my biggest recommend. But they have great training, man. Those 6 years, I wouldn't be where I'm at or as fast as we have grown if I didn't have the training of State Farm. And all this stuff that they taught you with accountability and how to run your agency, how to keep people accountable, and then just the high stress of a State Farm agency, right? Because for first, this was before, now they've changed it. They had a TICA contract. The first year, you become an agent, they like say, all right, go. And then you have a whole year to prove yourself. Okay. And if you don't make it, see ya.
And production based.
It's production based. It's basically culture fit, production based. That's honestly like if the sales manager likes you at the end of the day, like that's all it really is. You know, so you kind of have to like, it's a corporate environment. It really is a corporate environment, but it teaches you all the fundamentals. Like I worked at Wells Fargo, and some of the things that I learned from Wells Fargo, I was there from 2009 to about 2013. Some of the best like lessons I've ever learned are from Wells Fargo when it comes to accountability. Like my boss was right next to us, and like every 2 to 3 hours she would walk by. She's like, "Hey," because we called it products, because you have to have so many products in a day, which for us it was 8. Hey, how many products are you on? If you're at 2, like you better get going. So you have quotas and stuff, right? To like, and obviously they got in trouble for some of that stuff, which the word came out. But it taught you that like, and we took some of those lessons. Say, if you want to write 2 clients, you need to call 20 clients. You're going to talk to 10 of them, right? 10 of them, 7 of them will say, I'm good, I don't want to talk to you, blah, blah, blah. 2 or 3 of them will give you a quote, and you're going to write 1 or 2 of those. So it's just the math that Wells Fargo did that say, hey, you got to talk to this many people to be able to do the products that you need. Same thing in our organization. You're going to talk to this many people, quote this many people, and you're going to hit on this many people, if that makes sense.
Totally. So no, I agree with you there. I mean, we talk about it a lot. There's, I even sometimes wonder, going to the carrier side even, not just on like captive agent side, but just the carrier side for a few years to learn the ins and outs on that side. I mean, the training programs, the like you said, the accountability and everything can be so much more rigid than, the average independent agency who's building the business, and so it's something for everybody to think about, for sure.
And you don't make a lot of money, right? Like on our channel, man, like when you start, you don't make a ton of money, especially if you have a couple of staff, like, because they start from scratch, right? Like when I left in 2019, May 2019, I went from like, I think we had like 2,500 clients, households or something. I went down to zero.
None.
So you start from scratch and you pay for all these bills.
It's not like they're buying you out, Right. So that's, I think, but to go somewhere where they can, I know they give you a little bit of a book a lot of times, or if they don't give you a book, they give you, you start as a scratch, but they give you very high commissions, like almost 30% sometimes on P&C. You're able to kind of make a living and pay the bills and learn the fundamentals of how to be an insurance agent, right? Through that way, by somebody else almost paying it for you versus you starting from scratch and not being able to do those, if that makes sense. Yeah, 100%. I mean, and there's nothing, there's this big, everybody needs to be an entrepreneur kick out there right now, I feel like. And, I think entrepreneurship is one of if that's what you want to do, it can be one of the most fulfilling and best things you can do. But it isn't for everybody, right? No. And so there's also, I actually look at a producer within an independent agency as building your own little business, right? 100%. And if you can look at it that way, you get kind of the best of both worlds where, you can build your own little business, but have the support of a bigger organization. You just got to find the organization that you align with most effectively. And then if you don't and you want to do your own thing, go do it. Like you're a case in point of being able to do that, right? But I think it's good for everybody to have that kind of thought process. And I don't know maybe what you'd speak to folks out there that are in that position. Because I'd imagine, like you said, you went to zero and there's a high stress. You're putting it all on the line, and that's not necessarily for everybody, right?
Yeah, what do they say? Like in the first 5 years, it's like 70% of insurance agents kind of leave within the first 5, because you don't make a lot of money the first 5 years, right? Yeah. But they just could understand that, like, man, you just got to make it past 5 years. But those first 5 years are going to be really, really tough. Yep. But if you go to the independent channel, you almost turn that into like 2 years. Yep. Versus 5 years. But on the entrepreneur side, I'd tell you, man, it's extremely stressful. Like, cause like everything is on your shoulders. Like you don't just, it's not your own weight and your family's weight. It's the other 10 people that work for you maybe, right? Like you're supporting their families, you're supporting their kids, you're supporting their mortgage. So like you always have some days I go home, I'm there, but I'm not there. Yeah. And it's sad because it's a lot of days, man. So I'm trying to figure out how can I like just leave work and go home and not have to deal with the stress. If you think about it, man, one of the highest divorce rate in the country is entrepreneurship. Yeah. Because they can't stop working. You can't leave. It's like a bug. Yeah. Like you just can't turn it off. It's really tough, a switch to turn it off. Yeah. So I don't encourage entrepreneurship to everybody unless you really like can turn it off. If you cannot turn it off, it will be lethal for you, for your relationships and for long term, in my opinion.
No, I agree with that. It's easy to take it home. I think COVID exacerbated a lot of that too, because there was no shutting it off. But okay, let's get past whether you're a producer or agency owner. Let's talk the fundamentals, right? Because I think one of the things that you've been very good at is creating a system that your team operates within. And I know over the years it's kind of something that we've battled on which side to go to, like. Do you, and there's always a middle ground, right? But do you create more system and say, like, you've got to operate in the system, we know it works, or do you create some wiggle room so that Cyrus can put his own spin on it? Yeah. And it depends on the person a little bit, in my opinion. But we call it the science versus the art to a degree. Like, you got to learn the science first. Right. And so if you don't have any experience, you're going to do it step by step by step. And then you can add in some of the art and tweak it and things. But talk through how you have looked at that, because like you walked through it for a quick second about how detailed you guys are on numbers, and you've got all that vetted, you've got the data. But talk a little bit about that, because I think it's
I would say this is commercial versus personal lines. Like personal lines, I feel like you really got to look at your data. Commercial side, of course you do too, but the numbers are a lot smaller. Like you got to talk to so many less people because one account could be 100,000 in revenue, or one account for us at the most is probably going to be like $1,000 in revenue, right? So it's a completely very, very high volume. So we got to do and for us to do high volume, I feel like you just got to keep people accountable. And the fundamentals of like, what are your non-negotiables? We go back to that all the time. Okay, so what is our number one non-negotiable in our organization, which everybody it's like 125 CTEs, which is calls, text, emails. Okay. Those are new people per week. 125 CTEs is our non-negotiable. It's 25 a day. Like, that's not like something that like you can't do 124. You can't do 123. I don't care how much premium you have, right? Because I think what happens is when you give people a little bit of wiggle room,
they take a mile.
That wiggle room turns into a bigger wiggle room that you wanted it to be, and then other people see that, oh, that guy got a wiggle room. Yeah. So I feel like as an organization, man, especially for us, it's like we had to have figured out what's our non-negotiables. It's like, okay, you got to show up on time. That's a non-negotiable. Like there is no messing around with that. You got to show up on time. You got to be kind to people in our organization, and you got to hit 125 CTEs. Calls, text, emails. If you could do those three things, you're going to be really successful in our organization. And if you don't, you're not going to be with us. By no means I'm saying that's the recipe of a perfect or beautiful or amazing producer. There's many different ways. They might just not be good in our organization. They might be great somewhere else on their own, whatever, but they're just not, it doesn't fit our, we've had some producers that were just like, probably even producers that 5-6 times more production than other producers, but they don't want to do the work that other people are doing. Yeah. What that tells you is that they're just very good at closing. They don't need 125 CTEs to hit their numbers. So those people just don't work in our organization because they're not going to do it. And if they're going to do it, they're just going to call the same person 10 times. Like I used to have at State Farm. Literally, this is not a joke. I used to have this dude. I still know him very well, so I better be careful. But this dude would hit, our goal at that time was 30 calls a day. 30 calls a day. And I'd go back and look at the report. It was 30 calls on the dot for literally a month in a row. It was the same phone number.
No way.
Same phone number. And it was a
person had to hate
and
it.
it was a 1-800 number.
Oh, wow.
Right? It's like, go find something you love to do, man.
No
Like,
kidding.
why
This
are
is
you?
clearly not it. Yeah.
Our organization is not for everybody.
Yeah.
You know, your organization is not for everybody. You know, I tell this to my producer all the time. You got to wake up, put on your pants, and be excited about going to work.
Exactly.
And if you're not, go find something else.
Exactly. So one of the things that hit me as you're talking about that, I think a lot of leaders in general struggle with this because, you know, they're concerned that, you know, well, then I, you know, might have to let some people go. And then how do I find enough people to backfill those and do the recruiting? And, you know, it just becomes a big circle. And then you're willing to say, like, it's easier to just, all right, you made 121 this week, Cyrus, like, do better next week. Like, so talk through that a little bit, how you've managed that piece of it, the people side of it, because I'll stop there.
Well, mistakes, like you said, dude. This is by no means like we did it and everybody's doing it. It happens all the time, even to today, right? Some of our best ones now, you know, I just looked at the report this morning in our meeting on you know, and 2 out of the 12 people didn't hit the 125. But here's the thing. You could tell in the meeting, because they have to look at me, right? Like, and say, oh yeah, I was at 123. I'm like, 2.
Two more, yeah.
2. Like, that's it. Like, 2. So the one thing I would like about that is they're honest. Like, they didn't just put an extra 2, right? But the beauty of it is they know they did something wrong. And I tell our team all the time, don't let it happen 2 weeks in a row.
Yep.
It can happen one time. I understand. People make mistakes, right? But when you do it 2 or 3 times in a row, it becomes a habit. And habits are really hard to break. So it can happen one time. I'm okay with it. Don't let it happen 2 weeks in a row. Happens 3 weeks in a row, we got problems.
Yeah.
And we're chatting. And it happens all the time. But it's kind of our non-negotiables, and the team knows it. And they come to me before I even go to the meeting, like, hey, I just want to let you know, man, I'm at 120. You know? And I'm like, thanks for telling me. It's okay. Just don't let it happen twice.
Yeah.
Right? So that would be our number one, the non-negotiable. And I want to go a little bit deeper because I know you wanted me to go into the fundamentals. So what we do is at the end of the year, we go and look at every producer, their close ratio, their call ratio, their quote ratio, and figure out exactly what their number is, right? Okay, yeah. And then we have a kind of honest conversation one-on-one and say, hey, Elliot, what do you want to make next year, man? Because everybody is, at the end of the day, man, money is the biggest contributor, right? Like, you can't tell me that it's not. Everybody who's telling you money is not an issue, you're lying. Like, money is, that's how you pay their bills. Money sometimes does buy happiness. Seriously. Like, so I don't want people to be like, well, this person is not driven by money, but if he's not driven by money, he can't pay his mortgage, he's going to have bigger problems.
Yeah, it's the table stakes. You have to be competitive in wages, period.
100%. So we tell them, what do you want to make, right? And they say, this is what I want to make. And then we look at their numbers, right? And we kind of go down the line. Say, hey, this is how many quotes you need because we know your closing ratio because we follow that. You know, you're at 37%, you're at 17%. Like, there's a disparity between a lot. So we figure out exactly what they need, and we tailor, right, their other stuff, not the non-negotiables. We tailor everything else towards what they're going to make. Yeah. So at the end of the day, then what it really comes down to is just effort. Because if they just do what we tell them to, they're going to hit their numbers. They're going to buy that house. They're going to go on that vacation that they want to take Disneyland to their kids or Disney World. Like, they're going to do all the things. And the people that usually don't stick around because they're just not going to be able to go to Disney World or whatever, find a job somewhere else where it's maybe a salaried job to where that's really good for them. Like, that's cool. It's just not going to work in our organization.
100%. And I think that's an important piece too. You know, when you're committed to how you want to do business, to your core values, you live them out, you weed people out that again aren't bad people at all, but just aren't going to be a fit, right? And that's okay. But you want to do that before you have to have the tough conversation where somebody's blindsided or whatever, which you never want to get to. So then flip that around and talk about the recruiting side, right? Mm-hmm. So, you know, you guys are rigid to the system, and all of a sudden you've got a few people that, you know, aren't going to work out.
Yep, we had three in the last 2 months.
Yeah, there you go. So that, you know, that's nerve-wracking as a business owner, right? How do I take care of my clients? How am I going to grow? All the things. Talk through that a little bit. Like, where are you guys recruiting from? What have you found to work well there?
So for us, we're always recruiting, as you know, always recruiting. So we always have funnel of just like basically resumes that always come through our organization. And LinkedIn is a pretty big factor for me, where I look at with a lot of these things. And then a buddy of mine, he I don't know if you know what Loop Hire is.
I've heard of it.
Chris Jones. He's a friend of mine here. He owns a startup, Loop Hire, where they basically go find you. So if I'm really, like I was in a bind about a month ago, I reached out to him, and he will go find you like exactly who you want. 5 years with State Farm, not an agent, at this age range, maybe what you want. You want a male, you want a female. Like they literally like break it down to like exactly who you want that's going to fit well within your organization to be able to go. So if I need to go to that, like if I have a couple people that quit, like which just happened, then that's a route I'm taking. I just reach out to him, and we've had about 4 or 5 people with him in the last 4 or 5 years. And then the rest of it is just organically. So one of my recommendations for a lot of agents is, man, like you always have to be recruiting. Because I went to Who Hot, 2-3 months ago, and this guy was like incredible. My father-in-law and I, like he loves Who Hot, so like I love Who Hot, so we would go there. This dude was incredible, one of the best, like personable, like young guy, like driven. And my father-in-law's talking to him, and I'm like, man, this kid could be really good in the insurance industry, you know? And he asked, my father-in-law was trying to recruit him as well. And he asked my father-in-law, he goes, where are you? He goes, hey, yeah, because we were talking about, he's like, yeah, I like it here, but like I'm looking for something else. You know, I may go sell windows. They're trying to get me door to door to sell windows. I was like, dude, don't do that. Talk to us first. And he goes, okay, Tom, like, okay, I'll listen to you. Why don't you Insta me? Because he's 23 years old. He goes, why don't you follow me on Insta? My father-in-law looks at me like,
what's that?
What? I go, I got you. So I followed him on Instagram. He followed me. He came in, got his license. He works for us now.
That's awesome.
And dude, incredible. So always be recruiting, man. Everywhere you go, I feel like, honestly, when a lot of times, like on the service side, we do like to hire people that have been in the industry. Customer experience side is what we call it. Sales side, I hate hiring people that have been in the industry. I really do, man.
Yeah,
I truly don't like people coming in because they just have expectations, blah, 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 that they've had bad things they bring in. I really don't like it. I always hire people anywhere I go, talk to. Those are the places where I usually look up to, and LinkedIn and stuff for people that are looking, always hiring. Yeah. I always have a couple of extra people in my organization. Like I always like to have 2 people extra than I need to. I've always been that way. I've always spent more because I want to let people go at the time if they're not the right fit, if the non-negotiables don't work. You know, like I want to be able to say, hey man, like this is just not going to work. You should just leave. And it usually does happen, and we just flip back another person back in.
Yeah, no, I think that's smart. You know, you get too thin, and then you're in that position where you know this person isn't a fit, but you can't let them go until you, and it's just,
a lot of people do that.
100%.
A lot of agencies do that.
Absolutely, and I also think it depends on your goal for your firm, right? If you're in a growth mode, you're always going to want to be recruiting, hiring to a certain level, right? So you can stay ahead of your growth. But if you're, running a lifestyle business or something where you're just trying to fund your lifestyle and you don't necessarily need to grow, maybe just to maintain or whatnot. Then
I don't know what that means, but okay.
I'm with you. I'm not built that way, but hey, some people are, and that's great.
A lot of insurance, especially captive ones, man. As you know,
yeah.
especially captive ones, in my opinion, at least from what we've seen.
Yeah, well, you get to a certain point. It's kind of like you got your book, and it's generating a certain amount of cash, and you don't want to work that hard, but
right, and they can't retire.
Yeah,
they can't, because that's State Farm, for example. Like you can't retire because like you don't have any retirement.
Yeah, you don't have anything to sell, right? I mean, it's like
right.
So you're just
you don't own the book, you don't sell. Like so that's where a lot of those insurance agents we just have a bad name. We have a bad reputation in our industry. We're known as this like a 65-year-old male sitting in a desk with a bunch of papers, an insurance agent. Yeah, like it just.
There are still some out there.
100%. Some 80-year-olds that are exactly. So it's kind of. That's not who we are, and that's who not you are, of course. But there are, and we get a little bit of a bad rep from it. But those are the people that pioneered. Those are the people that kind of got us to where we are.
100%.
They're now like passing the torch. It's like, can you do it a little faster?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, no, I think that's a big, industry-wide, a big problem we're going to have to solve. Is just recruiting and how do we get younger people interested in the industry that don't think it's all that sexy or whatnot. And really, I get a little bit frustrated too around, everybody thinks we do get a bad name, right? You mentioned that. And it's because everybody thinks that number one, like it's all a very icky sales process,
Life
number
insurance.
one, yeah, that whole thing. And then number two is like insurance carriers never want to pay anything, right? My premiums just go up and I never get anything for it. And, until you talk to the person that was involved in the tornadoes here in Omaha, where their house got completely destroyed and an insurance carrier is coming in to rebuild their life. Like, that's where I think it's important we illustrate to people what we actually do and the impact we can have, right? Which is big and it's very important. But it's hard to show people that. And, again, there's so much content out there about, one call closes and use this technique. And, at the end of the day, it's about building relationships and, helping people out, right? So I'd be curious your perspective on that. Like you guys are in, as we talked about, a very high volume side of the industry and mostly personal lines. How do you look at that, right? Like, how do you make sure that it's high volume, but you're still having your team build the relationships and put the right right things in place for this particular client and understand their needs and all that stuff in a high-paced environment?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. So I think that goes back to training. That's why I was saying State Farm, learning how to sell value, learning how to sell home, auto, umbrella, blah blah blah, life insurance, because that's what we grew up on. Honestly, that's what I call like I grew up at State Farm from like a 20-some-year-old to like where I'm at now. Like, so I had no idea I was a producer, what you're talking about, I just kind of walked into this place and they're like, man, sell $250,000 in liability limits and this like add the extra 50% coverage on the home. And I'm like, why? Like, this person doesn't want that. But now I understand of like why we're teaching all of our agents to do the same things, because when a tornado like that happens, everybody in the world, when a claim happens, wants more coverage. And everybody in the world wants less coverage and pay less when they're buying it.
100%.
It's kind of bottom line how it goes, unfortunately. But it's our job, man. We have one of the best jobs in the world, to be able to help people. I feel like we're privileged, man, to talk to so many people and help them with their biggest financial asset for most Americans in the country, right?
Absolutely.
Which is homeowners insurance, which is what we kind of focus on, home and car insurance. So I feel like a lot of these young producers, what we do is a lot of training for them, and they're really good up front of what they have to do. So we have this like basically training cycle that we use, the 7 questions that we ask on every client to make sure that boom, 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 you hit the things that we need to hit. But then once they have coverage, once they're a bound policy, then it goes to our customer experience team. That's where the relationship happens. So I understood. A lot of our agents, like, when you're in a high-paced environment like ours, we're like, go, 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 go. What we do is we do a really good job up front of just closing the deal, and then a warm little handoff to the 10 people on the other side of the office that all they do is hold people's hands, ask for reviews, ask for cousin, brother, sister, uncle, dog, all the other stuff that you need. We have a 7-step process of onboarding, which basically gets them accustomed to their account manager, a little bit about the account manager, where they're from, what they do, how long they've been in the industry. I'm your point of contact. I'm going to hold your hand. When a claim happens, this is what you do. Hey, let's get on a quick Zoom call. You get to know your account manager. You get to know your claims manager. So we knew that was going to be a problem, and I was a stickler when it came to like the relationship piece of it as well. And I said, hey guys, if we're going to do all this right, all these policies we're writing, we really got to make sure that these other 10 people are doing the best job they possibly can to hold these people and build a relationship. Because the last thing we want to do is write a lot, lose a lot. Write a lot, lose a lot. That's not we don't want to be that agency. So we have a 7-step process. And then we have this like really a connection. So our people are more connected with the account managers. And then we call our operations manager. There's 3 people: CSR, account manager, and a claims manager. Each person gets assigned those 3 people, right? And a lot of times it's the same 3 people for the entity, but those are the 3 people, and they're connecting with them, adding card. So it doesn't go through our agents. It automatically goes to our account managers.
They can focus on the growth. And
these guys,
team can focus on the client experience.
Our agents don't even know how to add a card, delete a card, take a payment. They just don't. We don't want them to know. It's got to go through these people because they're fast-paced people. Salespeople shouldn't be. I completely believe it's like separate side. This is a different world. This is a different world. There is no in between. I think it's really hard for an agent to be really good at both.
Yeah.
So.
Well, and especially at scale, right? I mean, again, if you're building a
And personal
small book or
lines.
something, and PL, yeah, for sure. It is difficult. And even on the commercial side, though, I mean, there's certainly more involvement typically from the front end producer or agent, but you still have to have that back end service team that, again, you're going to plateau at some point
100%.
if you don't have that team behind you. And so I'm curious, you've now gotten a lot of this figured out. I know you're still tweaking and building all the time, right, as we all are. But going back, 2020, 2021, you're a year or two in to starting your own independent agency. What do you wish you knew then that you know now?
I stopped writing any policies July of 2020, I believe. I wish I would have done it day one.
Start anything that you mean?
Anything.
Yeah.
Any personal lines. Any business that I was writing myself.
You're personally not right.
I wish I would have just like started our agency on the independent channel and then just went full on like a CEO of the organization, not being involved in the day-to-day, because I still get trickle of like stuff that comes to me that like I can't handle. I just kind of pass it on, but it still kind of comes through me with all those clients I used to write. So that would be for me number one thing. Like I wish I would have done it a little bit sooner. And for a lot of agents, man, you got to get out of the grind. You got to get out of like the weeds of like the stuff. And I miss that the most. That's one of the things I miss the most is because I'm a sales guy, man. Like, and I'm not a process guy. I'm not a compliance guy. I'm not an account manager. I'm honestly not an insurance agent. I was a sales guy. I loved selling. I loved the thrill of closing a deal. Like that's what I enjoyed the most. But I knew my organization didn't need that from me. My organization needed me to go find partnerships and relationships and bring it to the organizations because that's the only way to grow.
Yep.
There is no way you can grow. Like you can only grow to a certain place if you're growing by yourself and maybe one or two people.
Totally.
But if you can teach the same things that you know to 10 people, you can grow 10 times faster, right? So that was my philosophy. I wish I would have grown a little bit. I wish I would have just done it from day one. I wasted, I feel like about a year and a half of when I left. Of doing that, and then a couple of other things that you asked if I wish I knew then than I do now.
Yeah.
I guess one of the other things would be like really get to know like your systems and processes. Like really dive into yourself. Like evaluate them every 6 months. Like this is really working. Our industry changes fast.
Oh yeah.
I mean, every day something changes. So like if you're not tweaking your systems, your processes. There's a lot of new technology, and I know you're a technology guy now, so you haven't, but dude, there's a lot of new things that's gonna make your life a lot easier, right? Like for us, one of the biggest hurdles we run into right now is like, people complain about is the 25 CTEs. Like, man, like I've got all these quotes, because we generate a ton of quotes. Yeah. Like I'm really busy quoting. Do you really want me to take away quoting by going and making calls to people? I'm like, to me, I would rather, and people would think this is wrong. I would rather have them make the CTEs, and the reason I say that is because if they didn't make those CTEs, the quotes won't be coming.
Yeah.
The quotes are here today, but the quotes won't be here tomorrow.
That's the roller coaster that most producers are in,
100%.
right?
So you got to be consistent. You got to do the fundamentals. They always complain like, I've got all these quotes. I'm like, quotes is how we make money. We all understand that. I want you to put priority, but somebody's got to do these. The beauty of technology now is you can text and email and all these things. You can bulk some of these things automatically through maybe your CRM system. So maybe your CTEs are automated now for a producer. Because honestly, calls are still one of the best ways to sell, but the second best thing for sure is texting. I would take 25 texts. Like State Farm is about to take a 25% increase June 1st. I would love to send a text to all the State Farm people. Say, hey, your rates are going up. Would you like a quote? Like, who would say no to that?
Yeah.
If they know the other agency, they know in their market, they know So I feel like I wish I knew that technology could enhance us and get us there faster. I waited way too long.
Yeah.
And then I didn't evaluate my systems and processes and I didn't hire fast enough for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the way that you and I are so aligned in a lot of this, it's building, the way that I always phrase that, and Brett Young, and I don't know if you know Brett Young, we talk about this a lot, but it's building a business versus a book of business, right? Like, and when you're starting your own agency, I would imagine you have to do this to a degree, right? Where like you got to build a book, you got to start bringing in revenue, start paying the bills.
Yeah.
But as quickly as you can, and I would say even from day one, you should be looking at how am I going to build this into a business, not a book that supports, again, my lifestyle, right?
Because you're not a State Farm agent.
Exactly.
You got to build your business.
Exactly.
You got to build your State Farm.
But I think a lot of agency principals and even big producers run into this where, you've built a big book, and a lot of agency owners, like the agency is built on their book. They might have employees, but they're still the largest revenue driver. They're handling a lot of clients. Nobody's really looking at the entity as a whole and saying, how do we grow and scale this thing, right? Somebody, like you said, has got to be that CEO or sitting on top of it, saying, what partnerships do we need? What carriers do I need to go build relationships with? What state am I going to go into
technology,
next? All the technology, everything that takes somebody that can see the next 2, 3, 4, 5 years and ultimately do that. Now, again, there's going to be a period of time in any business owner's life where you got to be head down, just grinding, building, all those things.
Yeah.
But I think taking that, even when you're at that stage, taking that time to get out of that for a period of time, every quarter, every year, something, and just saying, all right, where am I at? Where do I need to be? Now I'm going to charge to that point, right? But within the context of I'm building this to be a business, not just building my book of business. 100%. It's way different.
Yeah, it's really hard to tell a 23-year-old to do that, right? It's really hard to tell a 29-year-old to do that, or a 35-year-old.
Well, anybody that's trying to pay, I got to pay my mortgage, right? Like I got to put food on the table, and I get that.
Yeah,
100%.
Yeah, and they don't. And a lot of times, I feel like you just need to keep talking to them, keep drilling in their head that, hey, this is a career, this is a business. Yeah, this is good for you. Is it good for the company? I feel like if you can answer those two things, you're going to be able to make a decision that's right for both organizations, and somebody's got to watch it. Because people are going to just take shortcuts, people are going to do certain things, people are just going to do what's best for them. And the whiffing mentality, what's in it for me, it always happens, man. So if you don't have, we have a data guy that literally watches every little click, every little data, every call, every tag, gives me reports and all that stuff. And if I didn't have a person like that to bring it to me at 10 o'clock on Monday morning and say, hey, last week this is how many leads we got, this is how many quotes we got. I would have no idea what's going on in my business. Yeah. And I would have no idea what to bring, what not to bring, what to do, how much money do we have to spend, what's the projection of the revenue coming in to be able to do certain things. So if you don't have those things figured out, man, it's going to be tough. And I would say one more thing on that is, man, you asked me about, I wish I enjoyed the process more from 20, man. Yeah. I love the grind, man. I really missed that first year and a half. I had this whiteboard like that, exactly like that. And I had 50 people that I was quoting, and I have it, I took a picture of it. 50 people, and 2 of my CSRs sitting over here quoting for me, and I'm closing, and dude, that's fun. Yeah. That's the startup, in a 500 square feet. I mean, I miss it more than anything. And then boom, now we're like, oh man, now I can't even do that. Now I got to do podcasts and relationships and all these things to build what we're building. But I really miss so enjoy the process. You got to make those things fun, and I really miss that. And I wish I would have just soaked it in a little bit better than I did. We just kind of flew right through it.
Yeah. Yeah, what you do when you've done that and you're in that building phase where it's just, everything being thrown at you, and there is a level of it's stressful and you're grinding, but there's fun in seeing it grow and seeing that pay off and whatnot, that you get to a point where you've got something that's relatively stable built, and you're kind of like, what now? I haven't had any fires to put out in 2 weeks.
Right.
What am I supposed to do? But, I think it was Alex Hormozy that said, the best leaders, entrepreneurs are the ones that, they can live in the mundane or something like that. You figure out what works and just replicate and replicate.
Is that the guy who wrote 100 Million Leads? Yeah. We're just reading that. We read one book a month as an organization, and I just picked that book, Alex Hormozy, 100 Million Leads.
I'm just about to start it. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, we're reading it for the month of June.
Awesome.
Yeah, that's cool.
He's a study. Just what I've enjoyed about his stuff is it's so simple. He just breaks it down to very simple stuff we can all understand. It's not some big fancy thing, and he just says, this is what I've learned, and it's great. So, anyways, so we're kind of coming up on time here. I want to be cautious. So, what else is on your mind that, you're talking to producers out there, folks listening, that, you'd like to tell them that we haven't covered yet?
Oh, what do I tell you? I feel like every producer needs to figure out their own will and what they really want to do. I was talking to the team this morning. I'm like, man, I can tell you all these things. I can tell you all the recipe, all these things. But if you don't really want it, and sometimes my father-in-law used to say, if you really don't have the salsa, like insurance is not for everybody. You know, I feel like there's a lot of people that are just in insurance for maybe not the right reasons, or maybe this is just what they found. I feel like if you're not gonna wake up in the morning and like, you know, putting your pants on and like excited about going to work, you really got to reevaluate, because, man, I would say, but if you truly love what you do, man, this industry is one of the best industries in the world, man. And if you haven't figured that out, you know, I feel like every day I wake up, I try to figure out like why I do what I do and why do I love it. You know, like I go to work and I talk to this person and all I do is fires, like you said. Like, you know, when you're kind of at the top, all you're doing is like dealing with bigger stuff. We had a $2 million total loss in Bennington that hit, like that's on my shoulders, right? Because I have to talk to this client because they come to me and all I'm doing is dealing with that. I got to figure out like, what's the lesson in this, right? Like what's the lesson in what I'm doing right now where I feel like I'm wasting time, right? Absolutely not. It's this client, the way we treat this person during this time, this client will be with me forever. Because like none of the price, none of that stuff would matter after you take care of them in one of the hardest times in their life, right? When they have a total loss on a $2 million house with a tornado. So I feel like you really got to figure out like what's in it on the hardest times, like why those 25 CTEs. What's the lesson in that? What's it teaching you, right? And I would say, man, depends on who you work for. If they truly put some of those fundamentals for you, you can make a lot of money in this industry. And the other thing is, this industry, even if this is not the best industry for you, maybe you're going to leave and go do something else, it will teach you so much. It will teach you so much. How to talk to people, how to be presentable, how to socialize, you know, because like, I feel like if you're a salesperson, everywhere you go, you sell. Like you sell your wife, you sell your kids on a daily basis and all that stuff. So some of the things that it teaches you is pretty awesome. So I feel like my last thing for you guys would be to just go find what you love and find why what your boss is telling you or why you should be doing those things that literally like you don't want to do. Like I hated going to Wells Fargo meetings at 8 a.m. because they will have the report out, just like I do now at 9 a.m. on Monday mornings, and they will go line by line and ask everybody about their numbers. I hated it because like there was like 12 usually people there. And I was always like, I wanted to be 1, 2, or 3. Like I never wanted to be 12, 11, or 10 because it's embarrassing to me. So like when I was making those cold calls, when I was doing the things that I was doing, it was not to embarrass myself at the Monday morning meeting, if that makes sense, right? So I feel like whatever you're doing, you got to find the fun in it and find the drive internally, because if you don't find it internally, just do it for just a paycheck, this could be a grind. But if you could do those things, man, this could be so much fun.
I 100% agree, and doing it with people you like and enjoy makes it all that much better. So, well, man, this has been great. How can, if somebody wants to get a hold of you, learn about what you guys are doing, because you are in a bunch of different stuff that we haven't even talked about today, but how can they get a hold of you?
Hey, I'm in insurance, man, so anything insurance related. I'm a Cyrus at teamcyrus.com, so my email is pretty easy, teamcyrus, T-E-A-M, 402-213-9890. And I give you my phone number because there are so many people that I reached out to at one point, man, when I was in my bottom and I didn't know what I was doing, right when I got into the independent channel, when I was at State Farm and started, so many people helped me. And I feel like this industry is all about helping. There are so many people, man, that are a little bit ahead of you, right, that would help you. And I want people to reach out because that's the one thing that a lot of people don't do. It's like, hey, how did you do it? I'm like, I reached out to other people. People already have the recipe. I just literally, honestly, took it from them and then put a little bit of twist of my own in there, and I did it. So if I can help 1 or 2 people, man, that call me for this, I want to give back because so many people give back to me, and I'm so grateful for those things and for those people, because otherwise I wouldn't be here.
That's awesome. I echo that too, and I call it rob and duplicate, R&D.
There we go. I like that.
Awesome. Well, thank you, man. Appreciate it. I know everybody took a lot out of this one, so we will see everybody next week.